Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from central British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, oh, we know where Canada is, and British Columbia on the west coast. Right. That's where we are, and we call it beautiful British Columbia. And so today we have a very, very interesting guest. His name is Turk. Evan is a national recognized attorney, legal strategist, a civil liberties advocate known on operating at intersections of law, politics, and high-stakes decision-making. A former attorney to the President Donald J. Trump, even brings rare first-hand insights into the legal, political, and reputable pressures forced by powerful individuals and organizations. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So give me a bit of a background on yourself, where originally you were from in the United States, and obviously then through your education you became an attorney, and you a national recognized one, especially focusing on different laws and different directions, and as we indicated already before. So maybe just give us a bit of your background.
Absolutely. I grew up in New Jersey, a suburb of New York, the New York parents, and until after I graduated college, I was a financial advisor, a stockbroker for a few years, and a lot in that industry. I knew I wanted to move down to sunny Florida, and having a financial background allowed me. I had my own RIA, which meant I was a licensed investment advisor. I had my own firm. Went to law school at night in Florida while I was practicing or was handling my financial planning clients. And after my graduation of law school, I sat simultaneously for the New Jersey and the Florida bar and admitted to practice in both states.
And so at the same time you did that and your specialties were in particular, the matrimonial law, and you have a firm, Turk Laws.
Yeah, Turk Law Group. We do things a little differently. Everything is driven on success of financial strategies. I've been through a couple of divorces, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. Gave me a lot of insight to understand what my clients are going through, so it allows me to be empathetic. And really where I shine is to handle financial strategies in a way that we can get personal issues resolved that make sense from the financial perspective. And the majority of my clients, whether it's family law, which is just protecting their wealth, or we have a lot of CEOs that we represent and we serve as their outside general counsel. We also have some arbitration cases with FINRA for financial wrongdoing. But everything that we do is predicated on my background in finance first, and looking at the law as a financial transaction from a client's perspective, because when the emotions are high, logic is low. You have to just balance the two.
And I have gone through one divorce. Unfortunately, and then I've been together with my wife now for 42 years. Those situations are never easy emotionally. That I believe no one likes that. In particular, it's hard on families, and then also it can become very, very costly, especially when it becomes a question of the more money there is, the more delicate and difficult these issues become to create differences that may last a long, long time, and that's all unfortunate. So this is never easy.
No, Never is. And it's funny because clients always think that their situation is unique and unheard of, and that what they're going through is so different from everyone else's. But it's not.
No.
It's really isn't.
So the other part about you, Evan, is you've also been in particular, you've been involved in politics on a state level, likely, and then obviously the other one that will get the attention of the people watching us is that you have been involved with the Republican Party, likely, and then obviously was a former attorney to President Donald J. Trump, who we all know became president from 2017, was the 45th president of the United States from 2017 to 2021, and then the 45th president, and then again was re-elected in 2024 as the 27th president, and is now still the existing president of the United States, and is waiting for the midterm elections. But his election in 2024 did not only elect the presidency, but the Republican Party gained control of the Senate, although marginally, and of the Congress. So it became a very dominant position as the president of the United States. And I want to add very quickly that I was born in Holland, actually, and maybe I'm slightly older than you are, quite a bit older, likely, is I turned 85 years young, what I say, in November the 1st, which puts me in a unique position in terms of I started born in Holland, northeastern Holland. My parents were married in 1938. In northeastern Holland, we're about 10-15 minutes from the border with Germany, and they were in love. And so my dad worked in a lumber company. Very quickly, they rented a duplex, and they were in love. And very quickly, had a boy and a girl. And then my mom was pregnant with me in early 1940. And then what happened is a dictator called Adolf Hitler decided that Poland should become part of Germany. And it was obvious that the next things that would happen, he would not stop there. And so my dad then was called into the Dutch army in April of 1945. And the last time they heard from him or somebody saw him just before the bombing of Rotterdam, this amazing city, and because he felt that Holland didn't capitulate quick enough for his liking, so they bombed the center of Rotterdam, and thousands of people died. For 5 years, my mom would not know, and the family would not know if he lived or died, and she was on her own. And so with two young kids, and the challenge was that everybody had the same issues. They all was trying to adjust to a new life. Where the Germans had invaded Holland and the rest of Europe and Western Europe. And so it became extremely difficult. So the first thing that I remember personally was when I was 3.5 years old, when the Allied forces started bombing the war infrastructure of the Germans, especially touching on the North Sea, and visualize us in northeastern Holland, 10-15 minutes from the border. My mom would take us out to a flat roof behind our house because in the distance we could hear bombers overhead, hundreds of them, and a sound that I will never forget. And then she would take us outside on the flat roof because she felt safer outside than inside. And in the distance, we saw the sky being red from all the cities being bombed that had infrastructure for the war the German war machine. And so it was Hamburg, Wilhelmshaven, Kiel, all those. In the distance, we could see the sky being red. And the next thing that I remember well is that in 1944, they decided to cut off all the food supply. And so, and me as only 4.5 years old, what we would do is between my brother and my sister and myself, every morning we go with gunny sacks into the railroad yard, pick up anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we did, because they wouldn't shoot us, they boot us one, but we were back the following morning. And then the winter of 1944-45 were the coldest on record in Holland, and we had only a very small portion of our house that was heated. So in the front we were burning, and at the back it was so cold. And so I still remember that part, and then anxiety. And then what happened is the Allied forces landed with the D-Day and campaign overlord. They landed in June the 4th, 1944, in Normandy. It were the United States, Canada, and the UK landed at great cost of human lives that were lost on the landing. And the United States went east and south. The Canadians went north through France, Belgium, the west part of Holland, to the north where we were. And I remember as a 5-year-old that it was pretty difficult then in the north as the Canadians were pushing the Germans out, and they blew up all the bridges behind them, and we saw far too much that we should not have seen. Dead bodies, people being shot, people dragged out of their houses, during the war years, and our neighborhood, and all of those things. So it was April the 12th, 1945, that we were liberated by the Canadian Army. It made such an impression on me that I knew that as I got older and I grew up, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And it always became my dream, and I did. And so now, 80 years later, as I sit here, PTSD is still very much part of me, of who I am. The inner child, I got counseling for that in my 50s. Very emotional, that little boy that never left until the counseling. But the other part about it is that always stayed with me after the devastation of war in Western Europe. Then that in 1947, the Allied forces together that had been fighting, and then after that, the funding for rebuilding Western Europe, came into effect, led by the United States and other countries, and so that rebuilt Western Europe, and so that relationship became one that we took forward into NATO then, and still now, between those countries, we are leading democratic rule in the world. And so obviously somewhat troubling is to me, because I lived it, still very much part of me, that for those people that think after war, and I say that respectfully, is that everything, after the war is over, everything goes back to normal. It doesn't. It takes generations in a lot of cases. And so, that then all being said, if I sit here today, we do a lot of business in companies that I have in the United States. I have been in Canada now for 60 years. Started with nothing, had a number of companies interacted in North America, and my friends are the Americans. We are so similar in a way. I'm proud to be a Canadian, And so, but I'm troubled by the things that are going on around the world. May they be, because I've been there in seeing what can happen if we have war. We can think about Eastern Europe. Ukraine comes to mind. We can think about the Middle East. We can think about Venezuela, potentially Cuba. We can think about North America, North Korea, Russia, and China to a certain extent. And it's a troubling world, and I'm concerned about that. And then the politics around it become very, very critical, as to, I'm concerned about the Russians pushing forward in the Ukraine, concerned about the Middle East. As we sit here in North America, we are the luckiest people in the world, Evan. Every morning I wake up, I usually at 85, I still work, and my foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic, and I work harder even now than anybody else. At 5:30 in the morning, I get up, I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And the first thing that I do when I get outside, I say, I'm in paradise. I'm in paradise. And I believe paradise to me means North America. I'm thinking in terms of Canada, United States, Mexico together, and the Kuzma in particular, how we can work together and lead the world as they did, in the post-Second World War, giving leadership and that to me is important, and I'm sometimes a little bit troubled by where we are going.
Yeah, I completely understand, especially with your background. And the way I look at it is I am a few years younger. I'm 48, so I was born in 77. And looking at from my eyes, I look at it through my children's eyes. And
Exactly.
The country that I remember when I was little, I was in elementary school. Ronald Reagan was the president, and the way he spoke wasn't really divisive. It was really made you proud to be an American. And Rocky IV was out, and we had our known enemies. That was the way I grew up, and things have changed a lot. And we become such a divisive country here. We've never had problems with Canadians, and all of a sudden, watching the hockey game last year with people in Canada booing Americans, and that was unprecedented. It was always our friendly neighbor, and a lot of politics, and a lot of politics right now where it's very divisive on both the left and the right. And rather than engaging the middle, the extreme on both sides are winning and separating. And it's to the point where it's almost as if we're going to have a second civil war in this country. And there's really no right or wrong. There's a lot of there is right and wrong in certain things, but it's the fundamental core values, where you get your news and how you take information in. And I think it's also laziness. People don't really want to understand the other side. What I do is I challenge the other side. I challenge myself. And I was blessed. It's such a small world sometimes. I was at dinner, I think it was like around 2017, 2018. I got to meet Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA.
Yeah.
I had him at that point of time.
He was a young fella then, right? At that age.
Oh, yeah. He was like 22 or 23.
Yeah, just early 20s. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So we had dinner, and I was doing this strategy with charities. It's a tax strategy. And I would travel time to time and meet with predominantly lawyers, tax attorneys, and you had to explain the strategy 2 or 3 times before you got to one of two things. They yesed you to death, or they truly understood it. nobody under the first run of explanation understood it. Charlie did. And next thing I know, he's like, I want you on the board of my charity. And I was on the advisory board for Turning Point USA literally the next day. And I got his vision of what America...
That started in Florida, right?
Turning Point USA?
Yeah.
No, I believe it was Indiana. He's from Illinois.
Oh, yeah, that's where he's from. Yeah, okay.
So what I got to learn was how to understand the other side and try to have an open conversation with the other side. And you see so much hatred. And I'm looking at it from more of a conservative perspective, seeing the hatred on the left. And I'm sure the people on the other side of the aisle feel it's the same way. I mean, they have to. But how do we have a meeting of the minds? And everyone is now a fascist. Nobody knows what a fascist is. Everyone compares their enemy's ideology to Nazism or to Hitler. And I think it's just absolutely beyond disgusting. And there's so much hatred now that is behind the scenes, especially hatred for Judaism. And it's the accepted scapegoat again. And that's where it's scary, where people are accepting, and people, celebrities, Kanye West can say the most anti-Semitic things and not be blacklisted. This is not the world I want to pass along to my children. The problem is, how do we get there? How do we resolve it? How do we resolve it so countries like Russia don't think it's okay to attack Ukraine? How do we deal with countries that are destroying each other? I mean, they don't talk. You talk a lot about Israel, but they don't talk about what's happening in Nigeria, how the government is destroying all these Christians. Sudan. Because it's not, it's all these countries. So
hundreds of thousands of people being Congo, and go on and on and on.
Yeah.
So the part that I feel, Evan, is that looking at the United States, because it was so much part of what happened to me in terms of the freedom of Western Europe, and then the Allied forces liberating us, and then and then rebuilding of Western Europe, and so led by the United States, and then NATO again led by the United States, are bringing the free world together. And then I look at the United States in terms of, I believe it is July the 4th, when it is 250 years ago that the United States was formed from the 13 colonies, and then the Constitution of the United States starts with "We the people," and then from there on in, it became the foundation of what I believe is the free world working together. And and then through the election process, I watched many of presidents being elected, and then obviously including the 45th election of President now Donald Trump, which was somewhat controversial, but so have other ones been. And then the troubling areas in between. January the 6th comes to mind, which was extremely unfortunate, obviously. And then the election again now of the President of the United States. And then, but ultimately, if I look at North America, the opportunity between, and I look at it from the outside in, as when I grew up in Holland, I left there when I was 24 to go to the land of my dreams, Canada, is that Holland, at the time that I was there, had 27 parties. And somehow they survived in some form or fashion. And then looking at the parliamentary system in Canada, based on the English system more than anything, is boring politically, because it can very quickly change, and usually, and in some cases it does, and it is relatively stable politically, although Some people find it challenging if you have the left or the right. I'm a middle of the road or slightly to the right, likely, and that's who I am. But I don't get actively involved in all of this other than respecting. I respect my friends in the United States to elect whoever they decide to elect, and obviously the next challenge will be the midterms that will happen in November, in which, in particular, the Senate and the Congress will maybe change direction. We don't know. Time will tell. That may have an effect. But still, the troubling part is where the two parties in particular are always in extreme conflict of some sort or another. And with all the wealth that we have and all the privilege that we have and the respect that we have, to bring others together, in particular in North America, to have Canada with all its resources, and no, it will not become the 51 state of America, obviously, but we like our independence, and then the United States and Mexico together, we have so many complementary resources together that we still can have leadership in the world. And to a certain extent, we're doing that now, but we have to bring things together in between us in North America, between potentially on the Kuzma, and between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, and then understanding. There we see the United States of America, July the 4th, I believe, is the date, where they've been together 250 years under the Constitution that starts with "we the people."
Absolutely. It's what's really going on right now is that people do not even appreciate the history. They don't even know the history. So you go back and you're talking about your backstory about Holland. And I don't know what it's like in Canada, but I could tell you in America, I don't even think that people understand what Holland's role was in World War II. Nobody thinks about it. And it's unfortunate. We don't recall the history. And if you don't remember the history, we just are likely to repeat it. And the things that are happening now, like if you look at World War II, which you brought up, which is a great analogy, is that you had all these crazy leaders everywhere. And you said, this can never happen again. What's the chances of having a Stalin, a Mussolini, a Hitler, everything else going on at that same time? And right now you see things that people are looking the other way, forgetting, and leaders are taking over, and hatred, separation. People who are our friends are now our enemies, and people don't even know what they're fighting for. They're fighting for like clickbait on social media, and they don't know the true story. I mean, right now, what's really happening here in America is the big thing on the news is what's really going on with ICE. You hear ICE, ICE, ICE. And you can share the story from various different perspectives and get to completely different conclusions on what is right or what is wrong and who's at fault. And until we can have an honest conversation, we're never going to have a meaningful conversation. And the problem that we have is that you have a media here that is so focused on explaining it from a perspective, a viewpoint bias, that you never get an honest answer. And shame on the New York Times, because they used to be the most credible newspaper, and they are completely critical of only one viewpoint. And the days where there was just the news is no longer that. And you constantly hear things over and over again, and then social media only follows the things that you follow. So you're only getting stories from your perspective. So what I use AI now, because I find this works the best, is everyone has their opinion on something. So let's just say it's ICE and you're pro ICE. So you go on AI and say, give me all the reasons why I should be pro ICE. And give me articles, everything. Then do something that's very challenging. Go, give me all the opinions and all the viewpoints why I should not be pro ICE. So then you could at least understand the other side. And then you can make your analysis and be an independent thinker. But while you're constantly getting a funnel of information that is opinion bias, you're never going to be an independent thinker. You're just going to be drinking the Kool-Aid. And I see that on both sides. And it's interesting because I run this charity called the American Rights Alliance, and it was actually funded because of January 6 cases, but it's evolved to becoming more of a civil liberties union organization for American values. And when I say American values, we mean traditional American values, things that keep the family together. Because at the end of the day, when you were talking about your experience in Holland, your childhood during World War II, I mean, the only thing you could count on was not your government, it was your family. If you take away the family as the core value, you have nothing but the government to rely on. The government doesn't care about you. Your family does. So why are we, I can speak for my own country, are fighting against family values? And it's choice this and choice that. But when you know those choices are destructive and they're not helpful, and everyone's all about themselves now, and it's a generation of narcissism to the point where we've never seen it before.
Now,
I mean, that's really what the ARA is about, is, traditional family values, protection of freedoms, religion, fundamental free speech, and protect speech that we don't agree with, because we need to know what the other side is.
So the American Rights Alliances was started by Donald Jr., I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or
well, no, it was part of. He made a nice donation that helped get the charity running, and
Okay.
And it's evolved since. We've been really working on First Amendment issues, freedom of speech. Right now, we have a case. Her name is Tina Peters. She's in Colorado, behind bars, living a horrific lifestyle, and she's in her late 70s. And for a crime that's not a crime, she saw, and she was a part of the elections in Colorado, and she saw things that were irregular, and she was forced to destroy evidence, which from the state level was a requirement, but it breached the federal law. So she was forced to break the federal law to comply with the state law. And she used the whistleblower laws to report this. And because of the politics behind this, so she's a political prisoner, and she's now serving a 7-year sentence. And this is a life sentence for someone with COPD, and they didn't even have enough room for her in her jail cell. So they put her in a closet with someone else where it's like a 3x5 cell. And this is not how we treat prisoners. This is not how we treat people who have political differences.
No.
I mean, it's just heinous. I mean, and these are the cases that we're really highlighting. And we have another case. Her name is Shana Gaviola. She could go to jail for being a parent, for being a mom and doing what she thought was right. And the jury convicted her, and it wasn't because it was a jury of her peers, it was the jury instruction. The analogy I give is, let's just say you have a pool, and the rule at the swimming pool is, under no circumstances can you run. You see a child drowning, so of course you're going to run and jump into the pool to save the child's life. And then they arrest you. It's an analogy. They arrest you for running. Under no circumstance are you allowed to run. So then you have a jury of 12 people who are supposed to be your peers, but you can't tell them the reason why you were running because the judge says you can't tell them because it's too prejudicial. So now this woman's facing up to 2 years of prison for being a mom. I mean, these are the cases that we're bringing, and they're not technically politically driven. They're more American driven. And you have to understand, really what your values are and what kind of country you want to leave this. And if you can feel comfortable with saying that family is not important, religion has no meaning in society, and the next generation should fend for themselves, then that's your opinion. But that's not what we're about. What the ARA is about is defending those fundamental rights, because the reason why we are a society today is because of those three things.
I like it, Evan. So is it having impact? Will it make changes? Will it be successful in litigating those obvious issues that, or will it become political and it will not be successful?
Well, that's up to me, right?
Yeah.
And that's really the challenge that we have. So we're at a crossroad right now where you become just a political or organization fighting what you see and defending everything that's coming along your way based upon your political ideology, or you take a step back and say, really, what is the American dream? What is the American value? And how do we protect what we know is right? I mean, things that just scream common sense right now. I'll give you an example. There was this case in America. I'm sure you were following it in Canada, where there's an individual named Leah Thomas, and Leah Thomas was a male swimmer, swam for UPenn, was middle of the road, decent, nothing spectacular, and decided to become a female swimmer, and took hormones, did whatever this individual needed to do in order to compete. But that individual was born with male appendage. While competing, that individual still competed with a male appendage. The women in that without male appendages were forced to share a locker room and change in front of this person. All these records that these women without male appendages were swimming for were broken by this person. So as in a society where we have to pretend, I have to even change the way I speak right now to define what a woman is versus a man. And I just don't think this is what freedom is about. I think freedom is about common sense. I don't necessarily have to agree. I could take a libertarian viewpoint. I don't have to agree what a male is and a female is until it affects others. And when people who are going into competitive sports and they can no longer compete because their records are being shattered by other people who were born with different appendages. That's the problem. It affects other people, affects society. People like poo-poo this and say, oh, it's just a small thing. But it's a gatekeeper to all these other things. If you allow this into your life, where do we draw a line?
Right.
And you have to nip this in the bud, and it's common sense. And I'm not trying to be anything but diplomatic, considerate, respectful. But at some point, my respect interferes with my common sense and my freedom. Exactly. Bill Maher said it best about certain cultures that are terroristic in nature. And when it means to be liberal is to be open-minded to everybody. What happens if you're so open-minded that you allow and you protect the rights of the people who want to destroy you? At what point does common sense take away? And what point do we fight for common sense? So again, I'm trying not to be political. Again, my fundamental core philosophies tend to be a little bit more on the right than on the left. But that doesn't mean that I am focused on a far right extremist agenda. I just really want to protect the rights, the freedoms for all Americans. What made this country great, what we were all agreed on. After 9/11 in this country, Didn't matter if you were black or white. Didn't matter anything. We're all Americans and we're all united.
And
When Obama became the president, with the first couple of months, I didn't vote for him. But at the same time, I said, you know what? What's amazing about this is that we proved, Chris Rock had this joke that there would never, ever, ever be a black president. We proved him wrong. We've evolved as a society. But we did this together with people like Martin Luther King.
exactly.
You know, you didn't break the rules to get what you wanted. It wasn't like Malcolm X.
Right.
It was Martin Luther King was how this country evolved. And what's happening now with this ICE, bringing this back to the ICE, which I mentioned before, is when does a protest become a riot?
Exactly.
When does your freedom to express your opinions trump protecting those who may disagree with you? You see this in Canada. You see this in America. People blocking roads. I need to get to work, or I need to take my sickly mother to the hospital, but I can't because the road is blocked because some part of my language idiot is protesting for something that means nothing in that moment. My mom's life is at stake, and you're not protesting. You're creating a riot. You're creating a problem. So that's where we draw the line.
I agree with that. So the other part about it, Evan, just kind of going back to 9/11, I've been watching from the time that I was young what happened in Europe during the Second World War. The results of it, obviously, my family was severely affected by it. And at the same time, I watched North America. I've been watching U.S. politics closely and Canadian politics because I need to know. If I live there, then I want to understand it. What I found is that most Canadians respect and have good relationship with our friends in the United States because we are all immigrants coming from somewhere together, and we have worked together closely all along. You mentioned 9/11. It was when we closed the airspace that Canada opened their airspace for all the American planes to land with us, and we are one and the same in all those issues. And some people take offense to a certain extent. It may be tongue in cheek, but when the President of the United States suggests that we should take over Canada, that's troubling to a lot of people in Canada, including me. Because now it becomes maybe somewhat tongue-in-cheek, the same as Greenland, the same as some of the other areas that I believe war is bad for everybody, and the danger is in war, as you well know, as you studied these things and looked at it, is that when it starts someplace and we don't manage it and control it, under the umbrella of NATO or other groups, the United Nations tends to be challenged sometimes. Too many decisions, but not really real decisions, but at least it's an umbrella that it can very quickly go into something that is out of control. And then the next thing is obviously atom or bombs that are being developed all over the place. I look at Iran, I look at the Middle East, North Korea comes to mind, Russia and China. And so we are in a very, very dangerous period, I believe, in our lives under the umbrella, and that applies to the Americans, to the Europeans, to the people in Asia. So if there ever was a time of requiring leadership that came from under the umbrella of the United States in particular, and at this point of celebrating July the 4th, 250 years of democratic rule, if there was ever a time that is the right time to, and I know there will be midterm elections that will be challenging, and hopefully at some point, I just wonder for your comments. We have the right or the left, and usually to the extremes, going together Where are the independents? And ultimately, correct me if I'm wrong, that at the end of the day, even during the midterms elections, the likelihood is that the 1/3 on the left and the other 1/3 on the right will always vote whatever it is on that, and the decisions will be made by the middle of the road, the independents or the ones in the middle, which is likely another 1/3.
Yeah, that's a great question. Where are they? Right. So you used to focus in on capturing not only your position, your political affiliation, but the independents. And it seems as if we have gotten so far radical, extreme. Like, and I look at it kind of. Let me take a step back. The traditional Republican viewpoint was it skewed not from the right, it skewed a little to the left. And excuse me, I just shut my ringer off. It's just and the left went very, very further to the left. And what I mean by that is you ask 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you asked about marriage, gay marriage. Republicans would say against, and Democrats would say against or for. Now Republicans and Democrats are pretty much in support of, except the fringe. So I think the parties have moved, but it's just they still went so extreme to the other. If somebody says it's daytime, the other side says it's nighttime, and nobody's even concerned about it, saying, "Well, we don't agree. What about the independent thought?" Right? So I think what happens and why these elections are hard to predict is because that nobody knows what the mind of the independent is.
Correct.
So it's not based on political philosophy. It's based upon what's going on right now. Nobody likes what's going on right now, so let's vote for the other side of it. So it's basically ping pong or tennis, back, forth, back, and forth. There is no consideration anymore because you realize, like you said, the midterms. I think hopefully I'm wrong, but I think it's going to go the other way. I think it's going to be very, very liberal, and not because of anything, but because
most midterms do, right?
yeah, the majority of midterms do,
Always
and
do,
there's almost always, and especially now. So it's going to be. I hope it's not a bloodbath, but we have to realize for the future of the country what needs to get accomplished now until November, because that's all you're guaranteed, right? And if you recall, when Trump was in office the first time around, he had the first 2 years, and the second 2 years, nothing happened. All they tried to do is impeach, impeach, impeach.
Correct.
And I think if you really wanted to say when did this problem start, I would say it started there when all decorum went out the window, when half of America voted for this individual, and yet the other half is so concerned about trying to get him on charges that are so scary that you can impeach somebody, you could get them, you could convict anyone in DC. If you're a Republican nowadays, I mean, the jury's never going to side with you. So they do political warfare. And that's really what we're also about. Charity is political warfare. It's, someone shouldn't have to worry about going to jail because they ran for office, right?
Yes.
And
that's what is happening now, though, Evan. At what point, I say, as somebody that loves the United States and Canada and North America, we're so fortunate with all the things that we have. At what point will we conclude together that saying be tolerant of differences, in terms of be respectful, and saying that, again, the role of being leaders in the free world, democratic world, after having had it for 250 years. Most of Canadians will look at the United States, I believe, at least from my perspective, is that we're all the same. We're all immigrants that came from different places and have this amazing land with all the resources and the respect potentially of the world. And what troubles me immensely to have Canada and the United States being at differences virtually on a daily basis. And I believe I would urge leadership in the United States to say, be tolerant, because you cannot do it alone in the world, and to mend fences and say, let's work together, and and may it be on the issue of immigration. Obviously, the door was open too far, and that has now been substantially resolved to a certain extent. I would hope. And then the other one, tariffs and duties and all those other things. At what point do we say, let's work together now?
So I think getting back to my point, which will lead to what infuriates me is when somebody says, "Oh, Trump is a convicted criminal." That people actually believe that he had a fair trial and he was guilty of a crime and deserves to go to jail. Okay? You keep doing that to somebody, and now he's in office, and he's not going to forget. Okay? So attacking the enemies is now becoming a situation where both sides are problematic. With the ARA, we have to fight that so that people can freely run into office, because the best candidates aren't going to run because they're no longer going to want to deal with the threat of their freedom taken away. And it's easier when you're in your 80s to get away with things, because, no offense to you, because I know your age as you shared it with me, but I have 40 years, if I'm blessed, ahead of me, right? I don't want to spend 40 years, regretting things that I did because of an institution that's set out against me.
So what I say is this, Donald Trump is 79 years old or young, and I'm 85 years young, I say, and I did a book here. I did 5 books. I'm working on my 6th one, actually. This is my 4th one. That's a picture of me. Is that I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. Diet is important for me, and then that's a picture of me, So, and I want to send you a copy of my books, and then I hope you will send a copy of, and I'm going to send you an extra copy of this book, because I want to give it to Donald Trump as saying, I respect him, but staying fit and healthy and seeing what I'm doing is important. And at the same time, listen a little bit to this guy that has been around through all the ups and downs all around the world, loves North America and sees opportunity. And at least share with him some of my books, in particular this one. And I'm not lecturing him. I'm simply saying to them, everything is possible. And tolerance is very, very important. So I'm going to send you all of my books, all 5 of them, and then I'm going to give you an extra one. I'm signing up for Donald J. Trump, President of the United States.
No, that sounds amazing. I'd love to, and I'll try to get it to him. But I think I skirted answering about what you were saying about how do we get closer between becoming the friends and the allies that we are as Canadian and Americans. And right now, with the Olympics happening, I still root for Canada when America's not in it, right? So in hockey, when America gets kicked out in the first rounds, usually, we still root for Canada. I mean, it's our neighbor, and I never thought twice about that, right?
Exactly.
We just need to. You're not going to fix extremism until you fix the courts, because the courts are allowing the extreme to get away with things. When you could take somebody out of office and impeach him, even out of office, and then do everything you can to put him in jail, take away his freedom, and then civilly bankrupt the guy. And you do all that stuff, and you have these judges that allow it, and they skirt the law. And just like I gave you the example of this woman who may go to jail for being a mother, proud mother, doing the right thing. It all starts with the courts. It all starts with the extreme goes to the extreme. But if the courts protect the freedoms we have, it's the last hope. But that's what we have to count on. And what I see here in America is that you have judges who are basically politicians with a judge, with the gavel. And until you fix that problem, both sides are going to get extreme, and they're going to get further extreme because they're going to find judges that are going to push their agendas and say it's legal.
And Evan, the danger is, and I can speak to it because I was there, history will repeat itself, and that
it will.
In North America, the United States and Canada, we are all immigrants, and to be friends and tolerant and understanding and working with each other and respecting each other I respect the United States. They elected a president. I may not agree with him on all things that he's doing, and at the same time, I expect them to respect us as Canada, as a free country. And I look at Kuzma in particular, going back to, when they, on June the 4th, 1944, they landed on Normandy to free Western Europe, and I was there. So and for all my American friends, let's understand that July the 4th, 250 years ago, the United States was really formed from 13 colonies, and saying it started the United States with we the people. And so at the end of the day, things will change, but we have to become more tolerant of the other sides. And unless we do, then collectively we will not benefit as democratic governed countries, and the extreme will take over, and we will all become victims of it in a way, but the time is now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think one of the things that we have to learn about is June 6, 1944, what D-Day was all about. And you go back until learn also how Nazism took over, scapegoating, and anti-Semitism was the starting point, right?
Exactly.
And right now, look what's going on. I mean, you have Jews, hostage in college campuses. You have Kanye West. You have all these people that are anti-Israel right now. Like, I've never seen more hatred towards it. October 7th is now justified. You can never justify that, but society, especially on the left, has accepted that and said it's okay. And that's where you're scary. When they justify violence, that's when you have problems. And we're at a stage right now.
I agree, Evan. And look back at the Second World War. 6 million Jews were dragged into concentration camps to be murdered. And a total of 60 million people died during the Second World War. And the point that I'm simply making, unless we understand, and for those people that wonder what will happen, learn the history. And for me, it is important. I want to understand the United States. I want to understand, at least in a basic sense, their Constitution. And I want to understand that it happened 250 years ago, and that an election of presidents, that in over time is the system tolerates certain situations, but then again, for every 4 years there is an election, every 2 years there is a midterm in which direction can change, and we will 5-10 years from now look back at this is another period in the evolution of the United States as a democratic rule government for the last 250 years and going forward being the same, that ultimately we the people make the decision.
Exactly. And I would like to conclude with it is about the people. It's not about, learning. I've been doing with the ARA, American Rights Alliance, I've been really focused in on educating people and learning about what it was like when George Washington was around, and what the issues were, the real truth behind the Boston Tea Party. Because what you're told, like George Washington is an elementary school story. He never could tell a lie, and he chopped down a cherry tree, and then confessed to his parents. That's all BS. It's never happened. But we don't even know what the history is sometimes, because we have these stories, and we have to really get behind the stories and understand what America is all about. And I'll leave it with this one thought. It's like the things that we realize now, the one thing that America wasn't like, or life wasn't like a few hundred years ago, 250 years ago, is that every single president had one thing in common. They saw death like there was no tomorrow. They had 5 siblings. They lost 3. There was not a president that didn't lose someone close to them under 35. Life expectancy was 40 back then. You're living young, dying old. So the one thing we can focus on, at least society has done things tremendous now, where we don't see unnecessary deaths due to medical impairments. We have antibiotics. We have a good understanding that you shouldn't use a scalpel twice. You have to clean it. Common sense things now. But now we can focus on the other things that make us truly not only just Americans, Canadians, and just
be
human
tolerant, respect.
Tolerant.
And yes. I believe that's where the future is. And then understand the other side, and then realize that democratic rules still exist in the United States under the Constitution, starting with we the people. Every 2 years they select the Congress and make changes to Senate and Congress, and every 4 years president. And the same, to a certain extent, the system is different in Canada, but I love Canada as Canada is, and the United States as it are. We are all immigrants, and we will be tolerant of each other. And we have shown that throughout the years, from my perspective, and I can speak about it because I lived it. I was born during it. I've seen the results, and we don't want to go there.
Exactly. The biggest border in the entire world is the Canadian-American border. And,
exactly.
It's the easiest one to cross over back and forth, and not even know you were there. And let's keep it that way.
I like it, Evan. Evan, it was an amazing podcast. I really appreciate having you on my show. This one will be unedited. It will be released within 2 hours. I'm going to make sure you get all my books, and I'm going to give you an extra copy of this one, and then say to Donald, this guy in Northern British Columbia, the little guy that has 85 years old, would like to meet him. And, we'll talk about diet and exercise. And I say that respectfully.
As long as McDonald's is in that book, and you should eat it every day, I'm sure he would enjoy it.
I think that, thanks again, Evan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care.